Hello, everybody. My name is Michael, and welcome back to Last to First. Brazilian Grand Prix time at Interlagos. What a good time of year it is. Unfortunately, it is nearing the end of the season, but boy oh boy, do I love this racetrack, and I know it is certainly a favorite amongst fans in general. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. It's been a very busy 3 weeks in a row of Formula One. We'll have a bit of a break before the Las Vegas Grand Prix and then another break before the finale in Abu Dhabi. So it's near wrapping up, but yeah, let's go into my predictions for the Brazilian Grand Prix. It is once again a sprint weekend, the last of the year, last of the season, and has traditionally been a good track for sprint weekends. So let's hope that it is better than some of the past sprints have been, and hopefully it breeds another good sprint weekend. But in qualifying on Friday, I think it's going to be incredibly close again between Red Bull, the Mercs, Ferrari, and McLaren. But I think in P3, I'm going to go with Max Verstappen. I think he's just going to marginally miss out on pole. Like I said, it's going to be really close between the top four teams. I bet the top three in Friday's qualifying are all going to be within like a tenth and a half of a second of each other. I think it's going to be incredibly close. Just kind of whoever can put that perfect lap together at the perfect time will be the one on pole. But I think really any of the drivers in the top teams there could pull out a pole position. But I think, even if the Red Bulls continue to have the race pace advantage in the sprint race and the regular race, obviously we've seen how qualifyings have been so close throughout the year. And I think it's just going to continue to be this close as we wrap up the year, as other teams are converging on Red Bull for the time being until Bahrain next year, when Red Bull wins by a minute and 30 seconds probably. But we shall see what happens. So P2 for Friday's qualifying, I'm going with Lewis Hamilton. The Mercs have genuine pace at this point in the year. I think they're regularly fighting for the bottom reaches of the podium, P2, P3 in race pace. Their qualifying hasn't always been the best, but when race day comes, they have a pretty good race car. So I think Hamilton will be P2. He's been on really good form the past few races since the update. He's really got a good feel for the car, and obviously the Mercs were really incredible last year for them to get a 1-2 in the race. And even though it wasn't Hamilton winning last year, Russell had a great year as well, or a great race in Brazil last year. And the Mercedes just looked really competitive last year, with the Red Bulls kind of sliding back a little bit. But I think they will be very strong again this year. Now, for pole position on Friday, I'm going with Charles Leclerc. I think anytime it is a sprint weekend, somehow or another, Leclerc winds up in pole in one or both of the qualifying sessions. He is some type of specialist when it comes to poles on sprint weekends, and of course poles in general. The pole to win ratio continues to get larger, but it's not particularly his fault. I saw a really great thread on Twitter showing kind of all of his poles to wins or lack of wins there as well. And really most of them haven't been his fault, but it's still not the funnest stat line. But I think he will get another pole position in Friday's qualifying. Interlagos certainly isn't quite as high in elevation as Mexico City, but it is still one of the higher tracks in terms of elevation on the calendar. So I think that's going to help Ferrari in their straight line speed, and I think they're going to be pretty quick during qualifying. Going on to Saturday sprint qualifying, I think it's going to be pretty much the same story as the regular qualifying. The top four teams will just be incredibly close, and I think it could yo-yo a little bit and vary depending on who gets that best lap in. I think it could easily interchange between any of the drivers in in the top 4. I think once again in this qualifying, the top 3 are going to be separated by a tenth and a half, maybe 2/10 at most, but it's a pretty short track, so the whole field is really going to be close in terms of pace. So it's going to be really tight, and whoever can get that perfect lap in is going to come out on top. But going with P3 for the sprint qualifying, I have gone with Hamilton. I think, like I said, it'll be really interchangeable. Maybe he just won't get quite the lap that he did in Friday qualifying, or some of the other drivers will just have a little more pace and get a better lap. I think he'll wind up P3. Still a great result to start the sprint race, but I think it's just going to be very yo-yo, hit or miss, interchangeable between all the drivers. So who really knows who's going to wind up in the top 3. Going with P2, I'm going with Max Verstappen. I think, once again, he will get a good lap, but I think Charles Leclerc is going to pull another pole position out of the bag and snatch it up from Verstappen. I think it's going to be incredibly close between the two of them. I can imagine it going down to a half of a tenth of a second. I think it'll be very tight, but I think Leclerc will just pull out something special out of the bag and continue his streak of pole positions on sprint weekends. Looking at the sprint race on Saturday, I think it's pretty much going to be a repeat of what we saw at Austin between the drivers that I've picked. And starting with P3, I've gone with Charles Leclerc. I think that he's going to get swarmed off the start line by the other drivers ahead of him. And I think he'll pretty much just stay there for the rest of the sprint race. I don't think he'll quite have the pace to catch up or pass the two people in front of him, but I think he will have enough pace over the course of a sprint race to keep any other drivers behind him. But going to P2, one of the drivers ahead of Leclerc, I think it will be Lewis Hamilton. Just like in the Austin Grand Prix, I think he will finish out behind Verstappen, who I think will be P1. I don't think it'll be quite the margin that it was in Austin, but I think Hamilton will narrowly miss out on Verstappen over the course of the sprint race distance. Now, over the course of the race, I think of the full race, I think it might be a little different, but we shall see. I think Hamilton will be pushing Verstappen a little more in the race over the course of the entire race distance, and Hamilton obviously is very good around here. So let's hope for a good battle on Saturday and, more importantly, on Sunday. Now, for the race on Sunday, P3, I have gone with George Russell. I think he's finally going to get some mojo back at a track that he has previously done really well at. Obviously, he won here last year, and I think it's time for him to get back on track. He's had a couple of stinkers the past couple of races, but I think it's time for him to have a good result. I can imagine him starting a bit down the order and maybe 5th, 6th, or 7th or so, but I think the Mercs will generally have great race pace, and Russell in particular will be feeling a lot more confident at this track, and I think he will make a charge for the podium. For P2, I have actually gone with Max Verstappen. I've gone for him because I think the person who wins will pull something special out of the bag this weekend. I don't envision Verstappen having any mechanical problems like I had thought so in Mexico, but I could see Red Bull not having the perfect setup due to the sprint weekend, which they have done a couple times. Not necessarily struggled, but just didn't quite have the amount of time that they would like to perfect the setup. But just like they struggled a bit last year, they just didn't seem to have quite the perfect setup for the win, and that's kind of why they lost. But I could see that happening again. However, even an imperfect setup on the 2023 Red Bull means that it's still a very good car, so I think they have all the chance in the world to win on Sunday's race as well. But for P1, I have once again predicted Hamilton. Maybe I'm delusional at this point, but one can hope and dream and and just hope for some type of good result. But I do genuinely think the Mercs are going to have really good pace around Brazil again, and Hamilton will continue to be on fire, continue his good run of form. And since this is basically his second home Grand Prix of the year, he is going to want to get a good result. So let's hope for a good race on Sunday. For the masterclass of the weekend, I have gone with a team this week, and that team is Mercedes. I think the team will be firing on all cylinders, and it seems to be the most positivity coming out of that team in quite some time. I think they're feeling rejuvenated by the results as well as the new update, and also by Hamilton feeling so upbeat and positive and really feeling like he can push the car. But I think I know they had better pit stops in Mexico. I couldn't believe I saw 2.5 seconds for both the drivers. I was like, wow, good job. I don't remember the last time that I've seen that out of them, so that was positive. I know Total Wolff mentioned they've got some problems with some of the equipment for the tire changes that they want to make changes for next year, so hopefully that will help them next year as well. But I think that generally they've done a good job of recognizing that they've been struggling with the pit stops, and because of that, I think they will continue to do well operationally this weekend and won't have quite the pit stop struggles. In addition, I think they learned a lot from the US GP strategy-wise, and I don't think they'll make the same mistake that they did with Hamilton in terms of strategy if they are fighting for a win again. I think it's been a long time since they've been the ones in charge of things and battling for wins, and it feels a little rusty on their side of things, because when they were at the top operationally, like Red Bull are now, they were just sensational and perfect. And now that they have the pressure on them, Mercedes hasn't been quite as perfect operationally as they need to be. But overall, I think they will continue to make improvements with that and will be the master class of the weekend. On to the disaster class of the weekend, I am going with Lance Stroll. He's actually been in decent form the past couple races, which really means that his decline is imminent. He has never been consistent, so it's really time for him to have another stinker. I don't think that Aston will be competitive again this weekend, unfortunately, but I think Stroll will be well out of the points and behind Alonso. So I think it's going to be a tough weekend for Lance Stroll. Lastly, looking at my bold prediction, I am going with Haas qualifies in the top 7 for one or both of the qualifying sessions. That might not be the most boldest prediction, but I think their run of form has not been so good lately, even with their massive upgrade. They've kind of been struggling overall. They've always been better in qualifying than the race, but I don't think they've been that great in qualifying recently either. But Magnussen, of course, did excellent here last year. He got the pole position, which was quite shocking and a little fortuitous, but he did have genuine pace and made the lap count at the perfect time. So it was very impressive last year. And he also scored points during the race as well. So I think they will have another strong Brazilian Grand Prix this time out. I don't know if it'll be Magnussen or Hülkenberg. Magnussen's been clawing back at Hülkenberg a bit more as of late, but I wouldn't put anything past Hülkenberg to pull something out of the bag and get back ahead of Magnussen. So we'll see what happens. So those were my predictions for the Brazilian Grand Prix this weekend. Let me know what your guys' predictions are for the weekend ahead. Do you guys think I am delusional for some of my hopes and aspirations, or do you think they are relatively grounded in reality? Let me know what you guys think. Looking forward to the weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next one.